Why is commercial solar not closer to community and utility scale solar? It should be $1 a watt, $1.50 a watt. I do not understand why we're still seeing residential pricing in commercial.
I think part of it varies by market, right? So there is definitely some like demand elasticity to savings. And so I think what you see is in some of the more lucrative solar markets, California and Northeast, your EPC costs tend to be higher, right? Because the market can just bear more. Now, in fairness to some of the installers, those also tend to be higher cost places to do business. Like labor just costs more, permitting costs more. You go into more rural areas where power costs are lower, magically system costs are lower, because if you're not delivering savings, no one's going to buy it, right? So like that's kind of like, and so I think that maybe this has been a challenge for the entire industry. Like as power rates have increased and system costs have kind of come down, I think that the focus on efficiency probably got lost. Like back when I had my first solar business in 2011, 12, 13, and you mentioned like we would sell residential at $350, $4.
Yeah.
A lot of states had grant programs that were going away, right?
Yeah.
And we're sitting there thinking, man, we're doing a lot of business in Pennsylvania at $1.50 a watt grant, and that grant next month is going to 75 cents. Well, like we got to get our costs down, right? Like, cause like we need to keep delivering savings to the customer.
Right.
And so we would like eke every penny out of that thing, out of sales and marketing, out of our installs. How can we get crews doing 1-day jobs versus running a quarter-day jobs? And, how can we have 3 jobs in the same street at the same time? Like every penny mattered a lot. And I think now you're in an environment where like equipment costs have gotten cheaper and the tax credit is still the same and power prices have gone up and there's probably a little bit less pressure on those costs. And so I think a lot of people have gotten lazy, frankly.
Or greedy.
Or lazy or greedy, especially in door-to-door resi. I think there's definitely some degree of greed there.
Yeah.
And I think that's not great for the industry in the long term. I think, the companies that are, a lot of those companies have gone out of business, right?
Yeah.
Over the past year or two because they weren't sustainable. They had ridiculously bloated cost structures. They were able to sell at a high price and survived. But once anything bad happens, they just die, right? It's the companies that actually can control their cost structures that will survive. So I do think you'll see, I don't know what's going to happen with the tax credit at the federal level, we'll see, but like if incentives drop, if costs of equipment go up, whatever it is, people will figure out how to be more efficient.
Yeah, magically the install price goes down. Same.
Magically the install price goes down. Yeah. And look, I mean, one thing that we care very much about at Sunstone on the commercial side is making sure that our borrowers understand what they're getting and are saving money. When we look at that in a variety of different ways, right? Like commercial is more complicated than residential. There's demand charges. The bills are very complicated. And, you can really screw a customer over if you don't know what you're doing, right? Yeah. You can say, hey, I'm going to produce 100% of your power and only reduce their bill 40% because they have demand charges, right? And if you look at resi as a proxy, what actually drives a lot of the defaults in PPAs and loans is not consumer credit, right? It's the system wasn't installed right. The system wasn't installed at all. I was promised XYZ and I only got ABC, right?
That's right.
And so we're very kind of like, if I, like this for me is like a bit of a do-over for how I would, build a financing company. And so we're spending a lot of time making sure that our borrowers get what they think they're getting.
Yeah.
And if we think it's a funky deal, we just want to prove it.
Yeah.
Because I know that like in the short term, it'll generate a loan, but in the long term, it's going to generate a bad customer experience and probably a default, right? So we're very careful about that. I mean, we try and partner with installers that care, not just trying to sell a deal at $6 a watt and move on to the next one, right?